Close your eyes and imagine a world with no cities, no writing, no metal, not even the idea of civilization. Only firelight, only wind drifting over endless grasslands. And somewhere in that ancient darkness, the first humans, your ancestors, my ancestors, take their first uncertain steps into a world they will one day reshape. Tonight, we follow them across 300,000 years, through storms, extinctions, migrations, and miracles. This is the story of us, told from the very beginning. Our story begins in Africa, not the Africa we know today, but an older, wilder continent. Vast forests stretch across the land, rivers wind through untouched valleys, and herds of ancient animals roam freely. The earth is colder, its climates shifting sharply, creating a world of constant change. In this landscape, something extraordinary is emerging. Homo sapiens, not suddenly, but slowly, as if dawn is breaking across the plains. These early humans looked almost exactly like us. Their world, however, was unimaginably different. They lived in small groups, held together by cooperation and survival. They carried simple stone tools, bundles of fire, and the knowledge of their ancestors. Every day required careful observation, studying tracks in the soil, reading the sky, listening to the behavior of animals. And although they lived with danger, their minds were anything but primitive. Their brains were just as complex as ours today. They loved, feared, hoped, and dreamed. Their hearts carried the same longings: safety, companionship, meaning. Archaeological evidence suggests that around 300,000 years ago, in regions of modern Morocco, Ethiopia, and Kenya, early populations of Homo sapiens began to appear. Africa was home to many types of ancient humans, but slowly this branch, our branch, developed traits that set them apart. They shaped more refined tools. They mastered fire with greater control. They cooperated more deeply than any species before them. And then, perhaps the most important change of all, they began to communicate with increasing sophistication. Imagine a small human group gathered around a fire. Sparks drift into the night sky. A child sits close to their mother. Hunters return with food. The firelight casts flickering shapes on the cave walls. Here, in these quiet gatherings, early language was born. At first, simple signals, warnings, names for things, ways to point out danger. Then, over time, those signals transformed into stories, shared memories, lessons, ideas. These first stories helped humans survive, but they also helped humans understand themselves. Meanwhile, early cultural identities began to form. Different groups developed their own traditions, the way they crafted tools, the paths they traveled, even how they prepared food. These weren't civilizations, but they were the earliest sparks of human culture. As the climate shifted, these small bands of humans followed rivers, searched for new water sources, and moved with migrating herds. Each movement was small, just a few kilometers at a time, but across thousands of years, these steps added up to enormous journeys. Their world was shaped by constant environmental change. Glaciers advanced and retreated. Forests grew and disappeared. Rainfall patterns shifted, and through all of it, humans learned resilience, adapting to heat, cold, predators, and scarcity. What truly kept them alive was cooperation. Humans who shared food survived drought. Humans who protected each other survived predators. Those who taught their children well gave them a better chance at life. Cooperation became the core of what it meant to be human. And so, in these first 10 minutes of our long journey, we meet the earliest reflections of ourselves, humans who looked at the world with wonder, fear, curiosity, and hope. Their footsteps are the beginning of everything we know today. Their journey is only beginning. In the next part, we explore the rise of tools, language, and culture, and how early humans slowly became masters of their world. As our early ancestors wandered the shifting African landscapes, They carried with them something far more powerful than their tools or fire. They carried curiosity, an instinct that pushed them to experiment, to observe, and to improve. And it is in this period between 300,000 and 200,000 years ago that the human spark of ingenuity began to glow brighter. Tool-making, once simple and rough, grew more refined. Early humans learned to shape stone with greater precision, chipping away tiny fragments until a tool emerged with sharp, deliberate edges. These tools weren't just functional, they were evidence of growing intelligence and planning. Imagine a human kneeling beside a river, gently tapping a smooth stone. Each tap is intentional, guided by experience passed down through generations. The result might be a small hand axe or a cutting blade, modest by today's standards, but revolutionary for survival. With better tools came better hunting. Early humans could cut hides more easily, butcher animals faster, and defend themselves against predators. They became increasingly efficient, and efficiency bought them something valuable: time. Time to observe. Time to rest. Time to think. And thinking began to reshape everything. As their tools improved, so did their ability to communicate. Language, still in its earliest forms, grew richer. Sounds became symbols. Symbols became meanings. And meanings, over countless generations, became stories. The power to share knowledge more effectively allowed humans to pass down skills, warnings, and traditions. But language did something deeper. It connected minds across time. A grandparent could teach a grandchild how to survive a drought. A hunter could explain the behavior of an animal they encountered. A mother could comfort her child with a soft, rhythmic voice. This growing connection formed bonds stronger than any physical strength. With growing communication, humans began to imagine more clearly. They could picture locations far away, remember past dangers, and predict the behavior of animals. Imagination became a tool as powerful as any stone blade. Around this time, humans also started to show signs of early symbolic thinking. They collected unusual stones, shells, or pieces of pigment, not for survival, but because they meant something. Perhaps beauty, perhaps identity, perhaps something spiritual. We may never know the exact meaning, but we know this: symbolic thinking is a uniquely human trait. Their camps grew more structured. They organized sleeping areas, cooking spots, gathering zones. They created spaces for work, for play, for safety. This early organization laid the foundation for the complex societies that would come thousands of years later. As they learned more about their environment, early humans also expanded their diets and techniques. They began roasting roots, fermenting fruits, and using stones to crack open nutrient-rich bones. Every discovery, whether big or small, pushed humanity forward. And yet, even as humans grew smarter, the world around them remained unpredictable. Africa's climate shifted dramatically, forcing humans to adapt to droughts, floods, and changing landscapes. Each challenge strengthened them. Each hardship taught them new lessons. Through resilience, cooperation, and creativity, early humans slowly became masters of survival. They were still nomads, still vulnerable to nature's power, but they were becoming something remarkable, a species capable of shaping the world with their minds. In this second chapter of their long journey, humans learned not just how to survive, but how to thrive. And now, with tools improving and minds expanding, they stand on the edge of a transformation that will carry them out of Africa and into the world beyond. By this stage in our journey, early humans had developed tools, language, and patterns of cooperation that helped them thrive. But there was one force, warm, bright, alive, that transformed their lives more than anything else: fire. Fire had been used by earlier human species, but Homo sapiens elevated it into something deeper, something almost sacred. Fire was not just a survival tool. It became the center of community, of learning, of identity. Imagine night settling over a vast African plain. The sky is black and endless, filled with stars. In the middle of this darkness, a single fire burns. Its glow stretches outward, a small island of warmth in a cold and dangerous world. Animals keep their distance. The shadows flicker. The smell of roasted food drifts into the air. Around this fire, a small human group gathers. They sit close, not just for warmth, but for connection. Fire changed everything. It brought safety, extended the day, and allowed early humans to stay awake long after the sun had vanished. Those hours around the flames became humanity's first classroom, a place where knowledge passed from one generation to the next. Here, elders shared wisdom. Hunters recounted the events of the day. Children listened, wide-eyed. Women prepared food, learning new methods to cook, soften, and preserve what the group had gathered. Cooking itself transformed the human body. Softened food meant easier digestion. It released more nutrients, fueling the brain, allowing it to grow even larger. Fire didn't just warm humans, it reshaped them. But fire also gave humans something less tangible: imagination. As flames flickered, early humans watched shapes dance across the ground and cave walls. Their minds turned those shapes into stories of spirits, ancestors, animals, and the world itself. These were the earliest sparks of myth, not recorded, not written, but felt. Historians believe that around this period, humans first began to create pigments from crushed minerals. They might have rubbed these pigments onto their bodies or even onto cave walls illuminated by firelight. A new kind of expression had quietly entered the world. With fire, humans also unlocked the power of social bonding. Sitting together in the dark, sharing warmth and food, created trust. Trust built larger groups. Larger groups meant more protection, more sharing of ideas, and greater stability. The fire became a symbol of home, a concept that likely did not exist before. Not a house, not a structure, but a shared place where humans returned each evening, knowing they belonged. And as their nights grew longer, early humans discovered another gift: time for reflection. In the stillness of night, thoughts could wander. They could remember the past, imagine the future, dream of things not yet real. This ability, to picture what does not exist, became one of humanity's greatest evolutionary advantages. It allowed early humans to plan, to hope, to fear, to believe. But the world around them was never stable. Climate cycles brought droughts that lasted decades. Rivers dried up, animals migrated or vanished. Through all of it, the fire remained a constant companion. Wherever humans traveled, fire traveled with them, carried as glowing embers in carefully wrapped bundles, never allowed to die. In this way, fire became part of the family. And now, as we approach the end of this section, our ancestors stand on the edge of their greatest expansions. They have mastered tools, gained language, shaped culture, and built community around the hearth. Soon, they will begin a journey that will carry them out of Africa and into strange lands filled with new opportunities and new dangers. The world is waiting for them. As thousands of years passed, early humans became increasingly skilled at surviving the unpredictable African landscape. They had fire, language, cooperation, and tools. Their minds were active and imaginative. Their communities were growing stronger, but the world around them was constantly changing. And change would soon push humanity toward one of the greatest journeys in history: the first migrations out of Africa. To understand why humans began to move, we must imagine the immense environmental forces shaping their world. Africa, during this period, was a continent in flux. Rainfall patterns shifted dramatically. Lakes expanded and shrank. Grasslands appeared, then vanished. Sometimes these changes happened slowly, over centuries, and sometimes startlingly fast. When water disappeared, humans were forced to wander. When new rivers formed, they followed them. Where animals migrated, humans trailed behind. Movement wasn't a single event. It was a rhythm, slow, continuous, guided by survival. The earliest groups that ventured outward likely didn't know they were leaving their homeland forever. They were simply searching for food, for safety, for water. They walked along coastlines, through valleys, across open plains. Step by step, generation by generation, they drifted northward and eastward. One of the most significant pathways they followed was the Great Rift Valley, a vast geological corridor stretching from East Africa toward the Middle East. This natural road guided humans toward new territories, offering water and resources along the way. At first, the expansions were small, a few families settling just beyond familiar grounds. But over thousands of years, these movements created new communities, new lineages, and eventually new human cultures. Imagine a group of early humans standing at the edge of the African continent, gazing into lands they had never seen before. Ahead lay the Arabian Peninsula, a region that shifted between lush green landscapes and arid deserts depending on the age. There were rivers, plains, and animals to hunt. There was opportunity. And so, with no map, no destination, and no understanding of the vast world ahead, humans crossed into new territory. This was not a single migration. It was waves of movement, some successful, some ending in hardship. But the will to explore, to adapt, to survive, pushed humanity forward. As groups traveled farther, they encountered new climates, cooler air, different plants, strange animals. Each new environment changed them. They learned new hunting strategies, developed new clothing from animal hides, and adapted their tools to suit unfamiliar conditions. And with each generation, these traveling humans carried stories back to their fires. Stories of distant lands, stories of dangerous animals, stories of rivers wider than any they had known. These stories formed the first threads of a shared human memory, a history whispered across millennia. Not all groups continued migrating. Some settled for long periods, forming stable communities. Others moved onward, following herds or searching for safer climates. Over time, human populations became more spread out. Some remained in Africa, evolving rich and diverse cultures. Others ventured through the Middle East, eventually reaching the vastness of Asia. A few would move north into cold regions filled with snow and ice. Others would follow coastlines, discovering entirely new ecosystems. This gradual dispersion laid the foundation for the global spread of humans that would occur tens of thousands of years later. Yet even in this early stage, something fundamental was happening. Humans were no longer confined to one region. They were becoming a wandering species, explorers by necessity, adventurers by nature. The Earth was changing. Humans were changing with it. And soon they would encounter other human species, cousins living in distant lands, leading to moments of cooperation, conflict, and interbreeding that would shape the world forever. The next chapter of our journey brings humanity face to face with these ancient relatives. As early humans moved farther from Africa, they entered regions already inhabited by other members of the human family. The world of 200,000 to 100,000 years ago wasn't ours alone. It was shared with several other human species, each adapted to their own environments, each carrying tens of thousands of years of unique evolution. The first of these were the Neanderthals. For hundreds of thousands of years, Neanderthals thrived across Europe and Western Asia. They endured freezing climates, hunted massive Ice Age animals, and developed a stocky, powerful build. Their bodies were perfectly suited for cold, broad chests, strong limbs, and large noses that warmed each breath of icy air. Despite later stereotypes, Neanderthals were intelligent, skilled, and resilient. They made sophisticated tools, controlled fire, cared for their sick, and buried their dead. Their cultures were rich and deeply rooted in the lands they called home. And then one day, after an unimaginable span of time, they met us. We don't know exactly how these encounters unfolded. They may have begun in the Middle East, where Neanderthal and Homo sapiens territories overlapped. The earliest meetings were likely cautious, perhaps a distant sighting, a small group on a ridge, watching the other from afar. Two human species, separated by hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, looking into faces that were almost familiar, yet not quite. There may have been moments of fear, moments of conflict, but there were also moments of curiosity, perhaps even wonder. Eventually, these encounters grew into something more intimate. Evidence from modern human DNA shows that interbreeding occurred. This means that today many people outside of Africa carry a small percentage of Neanderthal ancestry, a quiet reminder of those ancient meetings. But Neanderthals were not the only cousins early humans encountered. Farther east lived another mysterious group, the Denisovans. We know almost nothing about them. Their discovery began with a single finger bone found in a Siberian cave, a tiny fragment of a vast and unknown story. Genetic analysis reveals they were closely related to Neanderthals, but distinct in their own ways. They likely roamed across large parts of Asia, from cold northern forests to high mountains, and possibly even tropical environments. Some modern populations, particularly in Melanesia, Australia, and parts of Asia, carry Denisovan genes, hints of long-forgotten contact between ancient peoples. Imagine early Homo sapiens entering a dense forest in East Asia, hearing unfamiliar sounds, sensing the presence of another group. These weren't Neanderthals, they weren't sapiens. They were something different, another branch in the human tree. Encounters may have been rare, and what those meetings looked like is lost to time. But their legacy lives on in our DNA. There were other species, too. The Homo naledi, the Homo floresiensis, the hobbits, and perhaps others yet undiscovered. The world was far more diverse than we once imagined, but something set Homo sapiens apart. Not strength, not speed, not size. It was adaptability, the ability to adjust to any environment, to learn new skills, to innovate endlessly. While other human species were deeply specialized, we were flexible, and flexibility in a world of rapid climate change meant survival. As humans spread, they absorbed ideas from these cousins, ways of hunting, ways of building tools, ways of surviving in harsh climates. Ancient humans weren't isolated. They were part of a shared world, learning from and influencing each other. Some species would thrive for a time, then vanish. Others would merge with sapiens. But in this age of coexistence, humanity was shaped not by isolation, but by connection. And soon, one of the greatest waves of migration in history would begin. A journey that carried Homo sapiens across continents, through deserts and ice, into lands no human had ever set foot in. The world was opening. The age of global exploration was dawning, and our ancestors were ready. As Homo sapiens journeyed farther from their African homeland, they found themselves in landscapes unlike anything they had known. Gone were the warm savannas, the familiar plants, and the predictable migrations of African animals. In their place stood vast deserts, towering mountains, unfamiliar forests, and eventually, ice. The Ice Age was gripping much of the world. Temperatures were lower, seasons harsher, and enormous sheets of ice advanced and retreated across the continents. Step by step, early humans entered this frozen realm, a world of cold winds, pale skies, and silent snow. Their survival here was not guaranteed. Yet humans adapted with remarkable speed. They developed new forms of clothing. Unlike their African ancestors, who often needed only basic coverings, these migrating humans learned to wrap themselves in layered hides, fur, and tightly sewn garments. Using needles carved from bone, they stitched clothing that trapped warmth and protected skin from freezing winds. Shelter became more sophisticated as well. Instead of simple open-air camps, humans built sturdy windbreaks, dug partially underground homes, or constructed dwellings using mammoth bones and hides in the coldest northern regions. Each shelter was a testament to careful planning and shared knowledge. Daily life in these icy environments required complete awareness. Hunting strategies changed dramatically. The animals were enormous: woolly mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, giant deer with huge antlers, and powerful bison. These creatures were dangerous, but they offered life-sustaining meat, fat, and hides. Tracking them across snow taught humans new kinds of patience and skill. The cold also influenced social behavior. People huddled together for warmth, shared resources more deeply, and created tight-knit groups where cooperation meant survival. A single mistake, leaving the fire unattended, failing to mend clothing, or misjudging a storm, could mean death. Unity became the difference between life and loss. But the Ice Age also gave humans unexpected gifts. Snow and ice reflected light, illuminating the world in pale brightness, even on cloudy days. Footprints became clear pathways, allowing groups to track animals with precision. Frozen rivers served as natural highways, guiding humans deeper into vast territories. Inside caves, humans discovered remarkable forms of art. In places like Europe, they painted animals on cave walls. Elegant horses, bison, deer, lions, and mammoths. These paintings were not just decorations, they were symbols, memories, perhaps rituals. They reveal a mind capable of abstraction, one that saw meaning beyond physical survival. Imagine a group huddled inside a cave during a snowstorm. Outside, the wind howls across the frozen land. Inside, firelight flickers across the stone walls. A human picks up a piece of charcoal or pigment and begins to paint an animal they once tracked across the plains. Others watch, mesmerized. The act is calming, purposeful, almost spiritual. This period may be when humans first developed deep traditions, rituals for hunting, birth, coming of age, and mourning. Fire, once only a tool, became a sacred element. Caves became sanctuaries. Winter became a season of storytelling. Despite the harshness of the Ice Age, humans flourished. Their flexible minds allowed them to adjust to anything, whether scorching heat or freezing cold. They could build, design, plan, and imagine their way through challenges that destroyed other species. The world was pushing humanity to evolve, not in body, but in mind. And now, with their skills sharpened and their numbers slowly growing, humans were ready for their next journey, a monumental migration into lands untouched by any human species. Soon, they would cross into new continents, shaping the course of all future human history. With each passing generation, early humans pushed farther into the vast landscapes of Eurasia. What began as small migrations became waves of exploration that carried them across deserts, grasslands, mountains, and forests unlike anything their ancestors had known in Africa. Eurasia was a continent of extremes. Some regions were icy and barren. Others were warm and filled with dense vegetation. There were towering mountain ranges, endless steppes, and long winding rivers that carved through the land like ancient pathways. To survive in this diverse world, humans became even more adaptable. They developed new tools suited to local environments, sharper blades, specialized scrapers, and weapons designed for hunting different kinds of animals. They fashioned spears with detachable points, allowing them to hunt from a distance and retrieve valuable materials. In some regions, they began crafting the earliest projectile weapons, innovations that would later transform human hunting and warfare. Life on the Eurasian steppe was especially challenging. These windswept plains stretched endlessly across the continent, offering little shelter from storms. But they were also rich with game, herds of horses, massive aurochs, and countless deer. To thrive here, humans learned to track migrations over long distances. They observed seasonal patterns, knowing when herds would arrive and when they would vanish. This knowledge was shared across generations, forming a rhythm of movement that linked families and communities to the pulse of the land. As their understanding grew, so did their complexity as a society. Communities became larger, cooperation became deeper, roles began to diversify. Some focused on tool-making, others on gathering plants, others on hunting or childcare. This growing specialization strengthened human resilience. Tasks were balanced, workloads shared, and through this, human groups became more stable than ever before. The social bonds of early humans deepened in this era. Traveling across such vast distances required trust. Families depended on one another. Disputes were resolved through cooperation rather than conflict. Elders became repositories of wisdom, guiding younger members with knowledge accumulated over decades. This sense of unity helped humans overcome the countless dangers they faced: predatory animals, harsh winters, disease, and accidents. Their survival depended on community, and community depended on communication. Language continued to evolve during this time. Patterns of speech grew more complex. Humans were no longer limited to basic commands or warnings. They could share ideas, remember events, explain strategies, express emotions, and dream aloud about possibilities. This new depth of language allowed culture to expand. Songs, rituals, symbols, and early forms of art spread across regions. People decorated their bodies with pigments, carved images into bone and stone, and created personal ornaments from shells or teeth. Each object had meaning, identity, beauty, status, or connection. And as humans traveled, these cultural ideas traveled with them. Traditions passed from family to family, group to group, slowly weaving a tapestry of shared human identity across Eurasia. But the continent was vast, and each region shaped the humans who lived there. In the cold northern forests, people relied heavily on animal furs and developed a deep understanding of seasonal cycles. In warmer southeastern regions, groups gathered abundant plant foods and developed lighter tools. Wherever they went, humans transformed their environment, and the environment transformed them. This period marked a crucial transition. Humanity was no longer tied to a single homeland. They were becoming a truly global species, capable of surviving anywhere. And soon, their journey would take them into lands no human had ever touched. Across frozen seas and land bridges, they would venture into new continents, shaping the story of humanity forever. As tens of thousands of years passed, humans continued pushing outward across the vast Eurasian landscape. Their populations grew slowly but steadily, and their knowledge expanded with every new challenge. By now, humans had adapted to deserts, forests, and frozen plains, and soon they would make some of the most extraordinary journeys in our species' history. The world was changing once again. During colder periods of the Ice Age, sea levels dropped dramatically, exposing land that is now underwater. These temporary land bridges connected continents in ways that no longer exist. For early humans, these new pathways opened doors into territories untouched by any human foot. One of the most important of these passages lay in the far northeast of Eurasia, a region of harsh winds, long winters, and endless snow. Beyond it, across a frozen stretch of land, lay a world humans had never seen: the Americas. But before reaching this new world, humans had to conquer the brutal northern climates. Imagine a small group traveling through Siberia. The cold is intense, biting through layers of fur. The sun hangs low on the horizon, casting long shadows across frozen rivers. Each step must be planned carefully. Ice can break, storms can strike suddenly, and food can be scarce. Yet humans continued forward. They followed herds of mammoth and reindeer, tracked rivers that flowed toward the Arctic, and learned to make shelters strong enough to withstand blizzards. They developed new techniques for sewing clothes tightly against the skin, turning hides into warm, windproof armor. Their ability to adapt was astonishing. While many species avoided such extreme environments, humans learned how to thrive in them. And then, eventually, they reached the land bridge known today as Beringia, a vast, cold grassland connecting Siberia to Alaska. This land was not a narrow strip, but a massive region stretching hundreds of kilometers. It had rivers, lakes, and herds of animals. It was a crossroads between two worlds. Crossing into the Americas was not a quick journey. It likely happened over thousands of years. Some groups stayed in Beringia for generations, building a life on this cold but resource-rich land. Others pressed forward, walking into Alaska and spreading across the continents beyond. This moment, the arrival of humans in the Americas, was one of the most significant migrations in history. For the first time, humans stood on a landmass entirely new to our species. And they didn't stop there. Slowly, carefully, they moved south, through vast forests, along winding rivers, across plains filled with enormous animals, mastodons, giant sloths, saber-toothed cats. These creatures had never seen humans before, and humans, with their tools, cooperation, and intelligence, adapted quickly to this strange new world. Other journeys unfolded across the globe at the same time. In Southeast Asia, humans followed coastlines and island chains, eventually reaching lands like Australia and New Guinea. This required something remarkable: early seafaring skills. Imagine small groups building simple rafts or boats, using logs bound together with vines or carved wooden frames covered with animal hides. They pushed off into unknown waters, guided by memory, by the stars, by instinct, or by hope. Each voyage was a risk, but curiosity and necessity drove them onward. In Australia, humans encountered landscapes filled with unfamiliar animals: kangaroos, giant wombats, enormous flightless birds, and strange reptiles. In these environments, they developed new cultures and innovations that would endure for tens of thousands of years. By this point in history, humans had reached the farthest edges of the world, from icebound tundras to tropical islands. The global spread of our species was complete. But as we expanded into new territories, another transformation was beginning. Quiet, gradual, but profound. Humans were about to develop skills that would reshape everything: art, symbolism, complex communication, and the deepening of spirituality. The next chapter explores the dawn of human creativity, a turning point that forever changed our identity as a species. As humans spread across the continents, something extraordinary began to happen, something that distinguished our species from every other creature on Earth. In caves, on cliff walls, in carvings, and in ornaments, the first true expressions of human creativity appeared. This was not merely survival, it was something deeper, an awakening of the human imagination. Our ancestors had already shown hints of symbolic thinking earlier in Africa, but now, across Europe, Asia, Australia, and beyond, creativity bloomed in ways that transformed our species forever. Imagine a cave illuminated by a small, flickering fire. The walls are rough and uneven, but in the shifting shadows, something remarkable begins to take shape. A human kneels before the stone, holding a pigment made from crushed minerals mixed with animal fat. Slowly and deliberately, they sketch the outline of an animal: a mammoth, a horse, a deer, or perhaps a creature from memory or dreams. These paintings were not simple decorations. They were profound expressions of thought. Each figure carried intention, whether to teach, to honor, to record, or to understand the world around them. The famous cave paintings of regions like Lascaux and Chauvet in Europe date to tens of thousands of years ago. They reveal a world in which humans observed nature with astonishing detail. The animals are drawn with lifelike motion, elegant lines, and a deep sense of respect. Some images are layered, as if generations added their own marks to a shared story. The act of painting may have served many purposes: to teach hunting strategies, to honor the animals that sustained life, to connect with spiritual beliefs, or simply to express beauty. But cave art was only one form of creativity. Humans began carving figurines from bone, ivory, or stone. These figures included animals and, in some regions, small sculptures of women with exaggerated features, possibly representing fertility, identity, or symbolism lost to time. Ornaments made from shells, teeth, feathers, and beads became common. These items were not necessary for survival. They were expressions of identity. Wearing them could signal belonging, status, beauty, family ties, or spiritual protection. Music emerged as well. Hollow bones with carefully placed holes suggest that humans created the first flutes tens of thousands of years ago. Imagine the soft, haunting melodies echoing across a camp at Beitfell, sounds unlike anything heard in nature. These creative expressions strengthened community bonds. A story told around the fire brought people together. A painting preserved knowledge. A carved figurine expressed emotion. A song carried memories across generations. With creativity came something even more powerful: complex language. Humans developed the ability to speak in richly structured sentences. They could share detailed stories, plan for distant futures, teach elaborate skills, negotiate social relationships, and express hopes or fears. This leap in communication transformed every aspect of life. It helped hunters coordinate silently. It allowed elders to share wisdom accumulated over decades. It enabled parents to teach children not just what to do, but why. Language turned memory into history, history into culture, culture into identity. Spirituality also deepened during this era. Humans began to think about existence itself. They pondered the seasons, the stars, birth, death, and the invisible forces of nature. Burial practices grew more elaborate, suggesting belief in something beyond life, a world unseen but deeply felt. These developments created communities richer and more interconnected than ever before. Traditions formed, rituals were celebrated, and knowledge was shared across vast distances. Human creativity didn't just change how we lived, it changed how we understood the world. And soon, these creative innovations would pave the way for humanity's next great transformation: the rise of advanced tools, refined hunting strategies, and the early seeds of agriculture. The world was preparing for a shift unlike any seen before. As the Ice Age advanced and retreated over thousands of years, humans continued to evolve, not in physical form, but in mastery over their tools, their environments, and their knowledge. This was a time when innovation accelerated. Humans were no longer merely adapting to the world, they were beginning to shape it. Across different regions, humans refined their tools with remarkable precision. They learned how to strike stone in controlled ways, producing blades sharper than anything previously made. These blades could be attached to wooden shafts, creating spears that were lighter, faster, and more effective for hunting. Then came another leap forward: the invention of the spear thrower, sometimes called an atlatl. This simple but ingenious device allowed humans to throw spears farther and with far greater force. Suddenly, they could hunt dangerous animals from a safer distance. This transformed hunting strategies, allowing smaller groups to bring down larger prey with less risk. But tool innovation didn't stop at hunting. Humans began designing scrapers for skinning animals, awls for piercing hides, and needles carved from bone to sew carefully tailored clothing. These garments were essential for surviving colder climates and showed how humans combined practicality with creativity. Weapons, tools, clothing, and ornaments all advanced together, forming a toolkit not just for survival, but for comfort, efficiency, and self-expression. As humans improved their tools, their ability to manipulate their environment grew. They learned how to construct stronger shelters, using animal bones, wood, and hides stretched tightly over frames. In some regions, they built homes tucked into rock shelters or carved into hillsides, protecting themselves from fierce winds and predators. Fire management became more sophisticated as well. Humans learned to create fire more easily, store embers for long journeys, and control flames for cooking, warmth, and protection. Fire allowed them to enter colder regions, travel longer distances, and survive in weather that would have been deadly to earlier human species. The Earth itself continued to shift during this era. Glaciers expanded, covering vast areas of the northern hemisphere. Forests moved southward. Grasslands grew and shrank in rhythmic cycles. Rivers changed course, creating new pathways while blocking old ones. Humans learned to read these changes. They noticed when herds migrated earlier than usual. They sensed when winters were harsher. They remembered where water could be found, even in dry seasons. Knowledge was passed through generations with growing accuracy, strengthened by language and storytelling. Elders became living libraries, preserving the past so the group could face the future. These deepening traditions helped early humans understand the cycles of nature. They developed rituals tied to the seasons, honored the animals that sustained them, and created legends that explained the mysteries of their world. But something even more important was emerging: a human sense of planning. Instead of living only in the present moment, humans began thinking ahead. They stored food, crafted tools in advance, and prepared shelters before winter arrived. They formed long-term strategies for survival, something few animals could do. Planning gave humans a new kind of power: the ability to imagine a future and shape it with intention. Communities grew more organized. People shared responsibilities more evenly. The roles of hunters, gatherers, toolmakers, caretakers, and storytellers became clearer. With each generation, humans became more skilled, more resilient, and more aware of their impact on the world around them. This period set the stage for a dramatic transformation that would come tens of thousands of years later, a shift that would forever alter human life. The seeds of agriculture were slowly being planted, not through deliberate farming, but through observation. Humans noticed how plants grew, where seeds fell, and how the environment responded. These early observations would eventually lead to one of the greatest revolutions in human history. But before agriculture arrived, humans had many more challenges to face: changing climates, shifting landscapes, and encounters with powerful animals that shared the earth. The next chapter reveals how humans confronted these challenges and how their mastery over tools prepared them for the next great step in their journey. As humans continued their journey across the continents, they found themselves living on a planet in constant motion. The Earth was never still. Its climate swung like a pendulum, shifting from bitter cold to warming periods and back again. Glaciers advanced, seas rose and fell, and ecosystems transformed in ways that demanded constant adaptation. For early humans, these environmental changes were not distant events. They were lived realities, challenges that shaped every decision, every migration, every moment of survival. Imagine a region rich with rivers, forests, and grazing animals, gradually turning colder. Snow lingers longer each year. Lakes freeze earlier. Herds begin to migrate southward in search of warmth. The humans living there must decide: follow the animals or face starvation. Many chose to move. Migration was not a single event, but a continual process, unfolding across generations. Children grew up walking paths their ancestors had taken, learning the rhythms of the land. They knew which valleys sheltered them from storms, which rivers froze first, and which plants reappeared each spring. This deep environmental knowledge, passed down through stories and teachings, was essential for survival. It allowed humans to navigate a world that constantly reinvented itself. During warmer periods, regions previously covered in ice bloomed with vegetation. Forests spread, attracting new animals: deer, boar, birds, and small mammals. Humans adjusted their hunting strategies, shifting their focus from massive Ice Age creatures to smaller, quicker prey. They invented traps, nets, and new kinds of tools to match these changes. During colder periods, when icy winds swept across the land, humans turned to megafauna: mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, bison, and reindeer. These animals provided meat, fat, bones, hides, and sinew, materials that kept humans alive through the harshest winters. Hunting such creatures required planning, coordination, and courage. A single hunt could sustain a group for weeks. But climate change wasn't the only force reshaping human life. Volcanic eruptions sent ash across continents. Earthquakes altered landscapes. Massive droughts struck unexpectedly. Floods washed through valleys. In some regions, rising seas swallowed coastal lands, forcing entire groups to relocate. These events tested humanity's resilience again and again. Yet even in the face of disaster, humans found ways to adapt. They learned to store food, preserve meat, and create more durable shelters. They developed stronger social bonds, knowing that unity increased their chances of survival. They relied on elders' knowledge, using stories of past events to prepare for future ones. It was during these challenging periods that humans leaned most heavily on their creativity and intelligence. They carved tools from bone when stone was scarce. They used fire to shape landscapes, clearing vegetation to attract grazing animals. They developed seasonal migration routes, moving with intention rather than desperation. And through all of this, community remained at the heart of human survival. Groups that cooperated endured. Groups that shared knowledge thrived. Groups that cared for the young, the old, and the injured strengthened their ability to overcome hardship. This social structure created something unique in the animal kingdom, the concept of collective memory. Humans didn't just survive individually. They survived as a unified network of families and traditions. The lessons learned from one generation became the lifeline for the next. And as generations passed, humans grew more aware of their place in the world. They understood the cycles of the seasons, the patterns of animal behavior, and the signs of approaching climate shifts. This awareness allowed them to make more deliberate decisions, guiding their journeys across continents. But soon, a dramatic tipping point approached, a moment when the world would begin warming rapidly after the last major ice age. As temperatures rose and landscapes transformed, humans would face new opportunities and new challenges. This warming period would usher in a revolution unlike anything that came before, a shift from wandering hunters to settled communities. The seeds of agriculture were about to take root. As the last great ice age slowly released its grip on the world, the earth began to warm. Glaciers retreated, forests expanded, rivers flowed with renewed strength, the winds softened. The entire planet seemed to breathe again after tens of thousands of years of cold. For humans, this warming brought a transformation unlike any they had faced before. Animals that once roamed in enormous herds began to decline. Grasslands shifted into woodlands. Many ice-age giants, mammoths, giant sloths, saber-toothed cats, disappeared forever. The world humans had adapted to for millennia was changing beneath their feet. And in this new world, humans faced a profound question. How do we survive when the world we knew is gone? The answer would reshape human history. At first, humans continued to migrate, following smaller herds and gathering from increasingly diverse landscapes. But slowly they began to notice patterns. How certain plants grew at specific times, how seeds sprouted where they had been dropped, how returning to certain regions each year brought familiar harvests of nuts, grasses, and fruits. These observations were subtle but powerful. They planted the first seeds of intentional cultivation. Imagine a small group returning to a valley where wild grains grew thickly the previous year. They noticed that where seeds fell, near their old campfire, near the paths they walked, new clusters of plants have grown. They begin to scatter seeds deliberately, perhaps without fully understanding the significance of their actions. Over generations, these simple acts became habit. Habit became technique. Technique became agriculture. This transformation did not happen overnight. It unfolded slowly across thousands of years in different regions across the world: the Middle East, China, Africa, the Americas. Each region discovered and cultivated its own plants: wheat and barley, rice and millet, sorghum and yams, maize and beans. Humans were no longer just observers of nature. They were becoming its partners, its cultivators. With agriculture came profound changes. For the first time, humans could produce more food than they immediately needed. This abundance meant groups could remain in one place for longer periods. They built more permanent shelters, constructed storage pits, and organized their living spaces with increasing complexity. Permanent settlement changed every aspect of life. Social structures grew more layered. Communities became larger. Roles became more specialized. Knowledge expanded not just about plants, but about the seasons, the soil, and the stars. Humans began to shape the land intentionally, cutting back forests, managing water sources, and domesticating animals like goats, sheep, and cattle. These animals provided milk, meat, hides, and companionship, strengthening the bond between humans and the natural world. With settled life came new forms of creativity and expression. Pottery appeared, allowing for storage and cooking in ways never seen before. Homes became sturdier and more carefully designed. Communities formed shared traditions, rituals, and ceremonies. People honored the earth that sustained them, celebrated the return of the seasons, and built early spiritual sites that hinted at the great civilizations yet to come. But this transformation came with challenges as well. Larger groups meant more resources were needed. Diseases spread more easily. Disputes became more common. Differences in wealth and status began to appear. Yet despite these difficulties, settled life allowed human populations to grow, ideas to flourish, and technology to accelerate rapidly. Humanity was stepping into a new era, one defined not by wandering, but by creation. And so, after 300,000 years of migration, adaptation, invention, and resilience, humans stood at the threshold of everything that would follow: villages, cities, writing, culture, science, and the rich unfolding of history. The journey from scattered bands of nomads to organized communities marks one of the greatest transformations in our species' story. It is a testament to human creativity, endurance, and imagination. Tonight, we have walked through that entire journey, from the first sparks of humanity in ancient Africa to the dawn of agriculture and settled life. The story of early humans is not a distant tale. It lives within us, in our curiosity, our resilience, our creativity, and our endless desire to explore, understand, and shape the world. This is the legacy of our ancestors, and it is the foundation of everything we are today.